Hello, Dr. Brandy Victory. Welcome to the Feminine Frequency Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. Yeah, we had the opportunity to connect earlier this week where I got a chance to be on your podcast. So we're doing a little podcast swap, which is always really fun. And now it's my turn to learn more about you and to share more of your wisdom, which, just even from your bio and from our few conversations that we've had, just I love how multidimensional your approach is to healing, and looking forward to learning more about that today. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be able to share the truth of healing to people.
Yeah. How long would you say that you've been on this path of being interested in health and more of like even like the energetic side of healing? Have you always been interested in both, or did it start with one and then lead to another? What has your journey been with that?
Yeah, it did. It started with one. When I was younger, I was very sick, with multiple problems going on. And my journey, I went through, I had bipolar manic depression. I had fibromyalgia. I had chronic fatigue. I had autoimmunity. I had hypothyroidism. I was 12 sizes bigger than I am now. I mean, it was a pretty bleak and terrible existence. I mean, and literally I was planning my death. Like, I did not want to live, because
Mhm.
really just getting out of bed sometimes and brushing my teeth were the greatest successes I would have in a day. It was really difficult. And to be a younger person, I was in my 20s when that was going on, and to know that, or to think that my life was going to be chalked up to one laying in bed and watching Oprah while everybody else is living a great life out there, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I tried all the diets. I'm the queen of programs. I've done them all, trying to lose the weight. I've worked out super extra hard. I've been in the fitness world. Have done all the things, the external things to try to maintain and cultivate a better feeling in my body and a better weight, and feeling better in my skin, kind of thing. And um, it wasn't until later that I came into the understanding of the deeper aspects of healing, and that we have to reach into the inside and heal from the inside out, to actually attain a sustainable level of well-being for ourselves. So that's kind of how that went.
Yeah, I love that intersection of spirituality and going inside to do the healing, starting there, and just really want to acknowledge the journey that you've been on, such a transformation. And I know that that takes a lot of commitment to really changing your life and to becoming a new version of yourself. So how long did it take you to really, once you had started to realize like, I don't want to live like this anymore? How long do you feel like it took you to really get to a place of more balance and healing within yourself?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a really hard question to answer, because I mean, the truth of it is, I'm still working on it. I honestly, I mean, every single day I wake up and I have my practice and I have my rhythm that I'm usually committed to really well. And when I'm not, things get out of balance. Right. So really, as I become older and wiser, I get more. It is not from a place of discipline and willpower of, oh, I'm going to do my practice so I don't have to like feel shitty. Excuse me if that's okay. Sorry if I said that. It's really more from a deeper place of knowing how I want to live and be and feel in this world, and the truth. Like, the more I awaken to the truth of who I be as a spiritual being, having a spiritual experience in this physical body. I used to say I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, but then I realized at some point that there was this level of separation that still happens there. And so, when I started realizing I'm a spiritual being having a spiritual experience in my physical body, then I can look at my physical experience as a spiritual practice, so that I can maintain this level of wellness and optimize my wellness as I age.
Yeah, it totally is a journey and it evolves over time. What our body needs, what we need personally, it evolves, with over time in different phases of our lives, in different chapters of our lives, it's going to evolve. So I am curious, you mentioned like your daily practices, and I think it'd be awesome to hear, like, currently, what are some of the things that you do to support your health and your connection to your spirituality?
Oh, yeah, great question. Currently, and it does change, because I personally like variety. But currently, I wake up and I read some kind of sacred text or a book that leans into more of a sacred realization. Like one of my favorite books right now is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Have you
Mm,
read that?
I love that book. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I just keep it on my altar. And then before my meditation, I just flip it to a page and I read a section and then I just take that into my meditation. I also practice a Buddhist chanting, Buddhist chant called Nichiren Buddhism, and it's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's a pretty big part of my life. I say that, but I also want to clarify that I'm not necessarily Buddhist. I believe that all paths have that validity, and so I love pulling from all the different paths, from Hinduism, from Christianity. I have a picture of Jesus right by my gohanzan, so most Buddhists would probably frown at that, but it's what inspires me, because Jesus is the greatest healer we know, and so I'm like, if I can aspire to what this man did, right, then I'm going to bring forth the best thing I can possibly do in the most purpose fulfilled life that I can possibly do. So yeah, so I meditate and I chant and I journal, and honestly, my work is a spiritual practice for me, and it keeps me aligned when I'm like really in the creative flow of it, because it's like what I'm teaching in the world is what I'm also kind of learning and working on, or have learned and worked on. So it's just like this evolutionary process of awakening as I dive deeper into the work that I'm doing. But other things that
Mhm.
also keep me sane and balanced are reading books that aren't self-help. I've figured out that.
Yes.
So smart.
This
Take.
this year, that was one of my goals, is to read more novels, is to read for pleasure, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It makes such a difference. It really does. And maintaining a healthy diet, and for me, eating gluten or corn syrup or processed sugar or um, grains, for the most part, they just don't really make me feel great. So I pretty much avoid them. I'm not saying I won't ever have a piece of chocolate cake again, because I think that can
Mhm.
be healing too. And, I just really pay attention to what's going in my body so that I can have the highest level frequency that I can, to express my most purposeful self. And some days it's laying in bed, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love there's been a couple things that you've shared around, like, your spiritual practice is not meant to be here to be a, like, requirement or a forceful thing that, like, you have to do, otherwise you're not going to feel better. Like, that's not why we do that. That's also not why we eat healthy. And especially when you're coming from this perspective of, oh, I nourish my body, I nourish my vessel from a place of feeling alive and feeling good and feeling healthy so that I can show up and be the best version of myself. Like, that to me has been such a big shift on my journey. And I'm sure going from the diet culture and from, eating to lose weight or eating to look a certain way, now eating to feel good, and choosing to do your spiritual practices because they are the most in alignment for who you truly are. And again, like you said, it's not about perfection. It's not about always and never and shoulds, but it's really about, okay, like, where can we come from that place of striving to, aspiring to be our highest selves in any given day?
Yeah. And,
Hmm.
and some days, it's harder than others, and for my movement, movement is like essential for my well-being. I tend to be very airy And I'm a Libra, which is an air sign, and I have a stellium of planets in Libra when I was born. So it's like being embodied can be really difficult for me. So I have to do things to like really bring it in, and working out, like going to the gym and getting on the treadmill, and getting on the vibration plate and getting in the sauna and doing Kundalini and doing yoga, those kinds of really embodiment practices, hiking, going out in nature. It's a little cold right now to do that, so I haven't been doing that. But those are definitely things that are important for my personal spiritual path.
I think that's so important to know about yourself, and I love that you talk about this piece of embodiment to create that feeling of groundedness, and I'd love to talk more about that. So we can do all this work in the mind and all the work in the spirit realms of meditation and connecting yet, but if it's not like brought into the body and we don't feel present and here, then there can be a disconnect. So I'd love for you to share more about whether it be movement for embodiment or even like sensuality to help bring in more of our expression and more of our power. I'd love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, as women, we tend to be sensual beings anyway, but so often, and I think for most women in what's been such a masculine world, which is obviously changing, yay.
Mm.
We've been taught to cut off our feminine power from a place of sensuality. We've been taught that being in touch with our yoni and, moving from that place, living from that place, working from that place is not okay, especially with the traumas that women have gone through sexual trauma and some religious trauma as well, that has just said, no, that's dirty, it's bad, it's not good. And when I see a person, when I work with somebody, I don't necessarily see their body, I see their energy. And so often I see women, they're living in the heart space and they're living in the head space, and they're just cut off from their lower body, like they're not even in it. And so especially in like workshops and one-on-one work I do with people in person, I will help them bring their energy back into their body and help them feel safe about being in their pelvis and their pelvic floor and all those places that feel really scary and dirty and bad, because it's necessary to do that if you want to be in your greatest flow and power. Because as women, we are built to birth things through our body, and being embodied and having an embodiment practice is so essential. And honestly, I mean, again, everything I'm doing is a constant evolution in my own experience of myself. I mean, even just yesterday, I had a therapy session with this new person I was exploring, and she took me through this journey about and back to like when I was 19 years old. And when I was 19, people thought I was my family thought I was in a cult, because I was getting into this quantum theory and consciousness and all these things. And, 30 years ago, people weren't having that conversation at all. And so I literally had to leave my family, leave Texas, go live somewhere where I knew no one, to actually evolve myself in the way that I knew I had to. And, when we're like cut off like that, and we're taught that what we're doing isn't right in the world, we can disconnect from the truth of who we are and the truth of our purpose and the truth of our reality. So any woman, and I'm sure that you have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, I'm imagining, because of who you are, if we're going to birth through something, create a new business, birth even a baby for that matter, come on, why do we have so much infertility? Well, there's lots of reasons, but one of those is because we're not energetically in our body, in our pelvis, in our ovaries, in our creative flow.
Yeah. I love how you talked about like bringing the energy down into the pelvis, into the womb space, into this like lower area of our body. And thank you for sharing about, what you're learning in your own journey as well, because we are constantly learning more and more through our own journeys to teach. And yeah, it is so interesting how disconnected women are from our sexuality, and not even sexuality, even just sensuality with ourselves, feeling sensuality, meaning feeling your senses and being connected to how your body feels, not just parts of your body, but your whole body. And that's why I've recently started going down on this path of embodiment, and I'm getting an embodiment certification this year and really practicing this more for myself, which has been such a deepening practice of connecting with self. And I'll share from my personal experience, there definitely was a lot of religious shame, not to the extent of, I know that in like the Catholic religion, there's a lot more like verses in the Bible, or there's a lot of actual direct, conversation about sensuality and sexuality and, not having sex before marriage. And in my religion, which I grew up as in a Jewish religion, it was more of the silence around it, like the shame around it, that there was just like, we just don't talk about that. And there is shame around it being something that is embarrassing or something that is wrong, inherently wrong. And it's so interesting because we as humans, it is part of our nature. It is part of how we even co-create other humans. And to have this religious, or so you mentioned there's religious trauma or there's sexual trauma, like we all have different trauma that we've inherited, both
Yeah.
from the collective or from our personal experience, or even ancestrally, that we've developed. And it's stored in our womb, it's stored in our body. And so we shut down to pleasure, we shut down to sensuality. And until we can start to really recognize and acknowledge that we all have some type of shame or trauma, and sure, there are exceptions. There are some people who grew up in families who are very sex positive or who were, more open, but it's very rare, right? What would you say, and what you see in your clients? That's not common, right?
No, that's not common. I wish it were common. I see it more common in my friends of today who have kids, and they're like raising their kids more consciously than I've seen parents in the past, which is a really awesome thing to witness.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely feel like things are shifting. And also, there's so much liberation in our, both in our energy field, but just in how we express ourselves when we're not carrying that shame, when we're not suppressing that part of ourselves, where there's more aliveness from that, from being a sensual being and not denying that part of ourselves. So I'm curious to know, like, what's opened up for you since you've started to do some more of this work of embodiment and being in the body. How do you feel like that has impacted you or your relationships?
It is, it's everything. Honestly, it's everything. I personally, my most profound embodiment practice right now is a practice called sensually embodied dance. And I've
Mm.
done a lot of things like, yoga can be an embodiment practice, but it can also be such a meditative practice that you kind of leave the body. The body is just in a flow and you go into meditation. It's a little different when you're in something like this. This is a class where you start out small group, like 6 to 8 women, a teacher, wearing lingerie if you want, you don't have to, starting out and the lights are all dimmed and they're red and you're on yoga mats and you're being talked through in the warm up. You're just being talked through about like touching your body and feeling your curves and enjoying them, however big or small or curvy they are. Right. And so I started this practice years ago, a few years ago, 2, 3 years ago. And then COVID hit and I quit. Because they closed, right? And then I wasn't there for a while. Then they opened it back up. And then I was like in this headspace of work already. And I was shifting my focus and I was working really hard. And I was like, I can't do that. Got to focus here, just all in. And I'm 100%er, like whatever I'm in, I'm all in.
Mm.
And then one time my girlfriend, she was like, hey, let's go have a private with Allie, our teacher. And I was like, okay. So 3 or 4 of us went and we just kind of did like a small group friend. It was our friends, big close physical expression of this. And and I was there. And as soon as I sat down in that classroom on my yoga mat, I literally just started bawling. I was just like, oh my gosh, because my soul knew I had been ignoring her, and that it had been leaving her out of the conversation, and that she's like knocking on my door every day. And I'm like, got better things to do. I'm a man right now, essentially, it's just really crazy how easy it is to like cut it out for me when I'm in that place. But then I got back into it. I was like, okay, sign me back up. I'm in. And since I have been doing that, and the way it flows for me is the first, couple classes or whatever, I feel really closed and less expressive than I do now. I'm like, I'll wear all the lingerie. I'll like do whatever, because it feels really, really good. And my teacher will offer me something up. She'll say, okay, well, we could open a little bit more here. Or we could explore eroticism in this way, or we could explore anger in this way. And for me personally, anger is not an emotion that I easily access. Like I just don't get angry. And I didn't really like the idea of trying to make myself get angry because I don't get angry, right? But even in that process, that practice, but because I'm willing to do it, like, okay, all right, we'll try, right? But what I found is that, oh wow, how interesting. It's not that I don't get angry. I suppress my anger, right? So what else am I suppressing? What else am I closing myself down to? So the embodiment practices, especially through that dance class, has really helped me recognize that it's okay to have all of the emotions and yes to them.
Mhm. Yeah, so beautiful. I had a very similar experience going to my first pole dancing class a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I was a dancer when I was a child and I loved dancing. And then I lost my love for dancing because of the competition and comparison and feeling like my body was the right body for dancing, and really kind of lost that part of me in a lot of ways, and also lost like the fun and playfulness that we have when we're little girls, where it just, we're curious and we're more adventurous and we don't care as much how it looks, right? And I remember looking for some dance classes as an adult, and I ended up finding some friends who were doing pole dancing. And at the time, because of my upbringing, I had a lot of judgment towards that. I was like, that doesn't seem classy to me. Like that just seems like not what I want to do. And eventually I ended up going to a class as I've been exploring more of, that was a big part of my healing my body image and my relationship with my body. I'm like, wow, like women's bodies are so beautiful, and seeing other women's bodies, all different shapes and sizes, moving and having a safe space to do that was so healing. And I just remember that feeling of coming home to myself, of like, oh, this just feels so right. Like it feels so good. It feels like such a natural expression of who I am. And like you were mentioning, there's resistance there because we're disconnected from it. And there's stuff that comes up when we are, exploring new parts of ourselves. So it's such a beautiful way of self-exploration. We do so much self-exploration through reading and through podcasts and through the mind, but self-exploration through the body, like I feel really emotional about it because it really is, I think, a new access point for women specifically that we're yearning for and that we need. And that's actually going to teach us like a whole new depth and layer of like pleasure and joy and whatever it is we're looking for. So thank you for bringing this beautiful conversation to us today.
Oh yeah, yeah, I love it. I too am planning on doing the teacher training for sensually embodied dance because, again, I like you. I think people, especially women, are missing, and they may not even know it. It's like me. I was like, nah, I don't need that class. I'm working right now, But in truth, how much better could my life have been? How much more creative could I have been? How much more tuned into my true expression could I have been if I had been allowing myself to feel,
Mhm.
literally?
Yeah, it's such a good point. Our brain tells us, oh, if I just work more, then I'm going to get more done and I'll be more productive. And I remember after pretty much every embodiment session I do, I feel so much more open, so much more creative, so much more in my alignment and energetically. Like it's not just, shifting my mindset to feel that way, like it physically shifts our frequency, physically changes us. And yes, so much more can come through. So that's a beautiful reminder as well.
Yeah.
Oh, so juicy.
It's so good.
Yeah. And so I do want to get back to our conversation around healing, because you are, you're a very, like, have such a dynamic approach to healing. And of course, the embodiment piece is something that feels really present for you now. And I'd love to hear more about, more of this quantum healing and soulful healing that we can access, and what that even means. What does quantum healing and soulful healing entail?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So, most people think about when they have a problem, they go to the doctor and the doctor's like, yeah, you've got whatever, diabetes. So here's a drug, or you've got XYZ, here's some medication. For me, I went to the doctor, and I actually, my ex-husband, he found my journal when I was 19 years old, and I was literally planning my suicide. And he was like, he literally read my journal, which is kind of bizarre. Somebody would read somebody's journal, but thank God he did, right? And he's like, you have to go to the doctor. And so he took me to the doctor, and the doctor's like, yep, you've got bipolar manic depression. You're going to be on this medication and this medication. And over time, it was multiple medications. And basically, I got to a point where I absolutely knew within myself that my problem wasn't a lack of medication. Like, that wasn't the problem. So I thought, well, I should be able to get off my medication and figure it out. So I would try to get off my medication, but every time I did, I would downward spiral and then go back to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you have to stay on your medication. And that's how we're taught in our society. And, this is not to say medication isn't useful, because I needed crutches, right? When you broke your leg, you need crutches, right? And so I needed crutches, but it's not drugs and medicine and surgery do not address the root cause of illness, disease, excess weight, chronic fatigue, or any of the other symptoms. And excess weight is a symptom of something deeper, as is every other symptom that we experience. And this is what I've learned over the years. And I personally haven't been on medication in, 22 years or something like that, since 2000, basically. And what I started learning, I met this doctor. His name's Dr. Robert Sounds, and he's a chiropractor in Houston, Texas, where I used to live. And he actually does this work on energetic and consciousness work. And he gave me some sessions, and I started feeling better. And what he taught me, I mean, he was like an angel, a godsend in my life. And he just taught me that there's like, I was missing a piece of the puzzle. It was way beyond diet, exercise, and supplements. Like, not that I didn't need personalized supplements built for whatever deficiencies I had going on and that kind of thing. But there's this other piece of the puzzle, and it's the reality that everything we're experiencing, everything is energy. So everything that we're experiencing in our physical body, in our physical reality, in our relationships, in our work, every single thing that we're experiencing is energy first. Mm-hmm. It's energetic in nature that's condensed down into physical matter. So if we're trying to address the physical matter, give a drug, do a surgery, exercise more, eat a different diet, not that that stuff isn't valid, but if that's all we're doing, it's like if you've got weeds growing in your garden and you're going to take the weed eater and you're going to just cut them down, guess what? They're going to grow back. You're not going to get to the root of it. If you go out there and you pull them and you get the roots out, guess what? Weeds are gone. And so the weeds are the subconscious interference that's disrupting what you're trying to create on a consciousness level. It's the interference that keeps us stuck in patterns. For me, when I was a kid, I was called names. I was called fat, fatty, fatso, 2x4, whatever. Like, and as a kid, that like becomes true in your mind. And then my mom, bless her, she didn't know any better, but she would tell me not to eat certain things and then put the cookie jar right in my face, and it was just so hard. So I started sneaking food and doing all these things. And the reality was that I had this subconscious program and this belief that I was fat, I was worthless, I was unlovable, I couldn't My mom was thin, and she was actually anorexic. I didn't know what that was at the time. So I wanted to be like her, and I couldn't be like her. So I became bulimic because these subconscious programs, these energetic blueprints were running my body and my life. We literally have these programs in the subconscious, and the subconscious is running our body and running our life on automatic pilot, as if all those old stories, programs, belief systems, and traumas are still going on in this moment.
Mm,
So we're living through this rose-colored glass viewpoint of I'm fat, I'm unworthless, I'm unlovable, I have no purpose, I should die, right? And we believe it to be true, but it's our perception. So in order to shift it, we can talk about it. Therapy is great. I love therapy. And that's a conscious process most of the time.
mhm.
We got to get to the subconscious and shift the subconscious programming and heal the subconscious trauma that you've been holding on to, or that we've been holding on to, so that we can release ourselves from the need to have symptoms, be it chronic fatigue, bipolar manic depression, right? Autoimmunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is I believe, the future of healing. I think that we've gone so far from the essence and the core of what healing really means. And this to me is the only thing that really makes sense. I totally agree that there's a lot of modalities that are great for, that are crutches or that are supportive in helping us to feel better. But if we're really going to get to the root of what's going on, we have to get to those subconscious programs. And that's really what had me shift out of being, a clinical nutritionist and moving into mindset, because I saw this disconnect of, if we're not really getting to the root of what's going on, like, why are people emotionally eating in the first place? Why are people treating their bodies like shit? Why are people not taking care of themselves in the way that they say that they want to? It's because consciously they want to be skinny or want to feel better, but subconsciously there's something that's blocking them. And I really appreciate how clearly you explained that and really broke that down of the difference between these different types of healing modalities. So in your work with clients, share a little bit more about what does that look like, maybe to access those subconscious, beliefs, and what are some of the different modalities that you use as a practitioner to help people to really uncover that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm a master practitioner of bioenergetic synchronization technique. It's called BEST for short, which is an energetic consciousness repatterning process that we can do in person or virtual. Also spent many years studying with a Native American Apache shaman who's taught me how to access different energy fields and help shift them. The process when I work with a patient is really one of helping them come to what is it they want to get, like what's their why are they here, and then helping them come to understand what's been holding them back. And maybe they'll come to it consciously, like, oh yeah, well, I had this trauma when I was a kid, and so I feel unlovable, right? That could be that. Or they may not know. So, and that's okay. But all we got to do is we got to find the frequency, and we can do that. Like, it's a very easy practice where you can have somebody close their eyes and I have them go into their body, like breathe into their body. So they embodiment, right? So we're like tuned into our body because our inner wisdom speaks through our body. So then when we can get tuned into our body and we can start going through process together where I help them feel into what's true and what's not true, and those and where stagnation or energetic blockages or disharmonious frequencies are in their body field or space, then I can take them through process where they can actually remove it or look at it, be with it, accept it, heal it, with the help of me and their guides and spirit and whoever you work with out there, way beyond our physical body. And then we basically move that frequency out and then have them pull in the frequency that they want, or the belief or the feeling that they want to embody, and then we shift it.
Mm, amazing. Yeah, so cool. I wanted you to just like share behind the scenes of what you do, because I know that you have many different modalities you use, and that was super helpful to even just give a little snapshot of that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, most people are like, how do you just shift it? Right. Because I've been trying to shift it. I've been trying to stop eating carbs at night. Right. I can't stop. I can't stop drinking a glass of wine at night before bed, and then that's a belief and that's an experience. And the experience that we have creates a feeling, which creates a reaction, which creates another experience, which creates another feeling. And so there's this kind of this vortex that we can get caught in on an energetic level. But the great thing and what quantum physics is actually showing us, like the science is showing us this, we just haven't caught up to it yet. Most people, it's not being taught in like school yet. But what it shows us is that there's the ability to shift in an instant, to shift so quickly that you can be both things at once. Because in that moment of instantaneous shift, you're both things at once. It's called a quantum flip. And that's science, right? And we're a part of that nature. We're just like we're a part of everything. And so when we can really begin to wrap our mind around the fact that we actually do have the ability to shift, we just have to find the key to unlock that healing potential. And it's different for everybody, right? But we have the ability to shift. And then once you like accept that as your truth, guess what? No holds barred.
Yeah. That's even a belief in itself, the idea that we can't shift the belief, right?
Got it.
Tried so many times, I haven't been able to do it. I can't do it. It's not possible. And I think that right there, what you shared is really the foundation or the starting point of even believing that it's possible for you to change. And really, I think, I definitely nerd out about the quantum field and understanding quantum physics. Like, it's so fun for me. And, that's not everyone's interest. Not everyone has to understand that. But if we can take that complex information and translate it in a way that people can use it, I think that's where it's at. So for anyone who's listening, if you're not like super turned on by the quantum field, but you actually want to heal, like, it is possible for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does turn you on in your spiritual world? Like quantum physics for me is a spiritual practice. It might sound really weird. I should name a book that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what does turn you on in your spiritual world, right? I mean, maybe it's God, right? Maybe it's the concept of God. Maybe it's the concept of guides. Maybe it's the concept of goddess. Maybe it's the concept of, whatever it is that turns you on, that part of yourself that that is way bigger than your physical body or physical experience, because we are not our body. We're not our physical experience. We're not our mind. We're way bigger than that. And that's the part that we want to tap into and resource from.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for sharing such powerful wisdom with us today. I also really appreciated your vulnerability and you sharing parts of your story. I think so relatable for so many women. And I would love to have you share where people can follow you. Where can they continue learning from you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You can go to my website and I have some patient testimonials on there if you'd like to hear from other women, and actually a man is on there too who've experienced my work. It's drbrandyvictory.com. So Dr. Brandy with a Y, victory like the cheer.com. And then if the one easiest way for people to get involved in my work is I have a group coaching program called the Uplevel Your Health VIP program. It's only $27 a month and you can cancel anytime. So in there's monthly empowerment packs where I send out a pack of videos and resources and tools and worksheets to help people, like give them tools throughout the month that they can use. And then every week in the Facebook group, I go live for training or for questions, so people can actually ask me questions one-on-one. So yeah, so that would be at Facebook, my Facebook page. I don't know. I'll have to give you the link.
We'll put it in the show notes. I'll make a note to make sure that it's in there. And I think going to your website sounds like a great place to start. And then we'll make sure that link is there. So yeah. Thank you again. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is always fun. And I love having conversations with you. Like, okay, we're going to have to do this again.
Yes, there's so much more.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, have a blessed week.